Osamu Dazai is a member of the armed detective agency with a special ability known as no longer human, or disqualified from being human. This ability allows him to nullify the powers of his opponents. Although he's not the main character of the anime, his popularity arguably rivals or even surpasses the protagonist, Nakajima Atsushi. So, why is he so popular? Why do so many people like him, despite the fact that he could easily be considered a rather gloomy character? This time, we're going to explore that. We'll look into the philosophy and psychology behind his character, delve into his past, and try to understand his obsession with death, and even suicide. Even though Dazai is now part of the armed detective agency, he actually has a dark past tied to the Port Mafia, a powerful underground criminal organization. That's why he possesses deep knowledge of the underworld. When he joined the agency, he was often called lazy by Doppo Kunikida, who was constantly annoyed by Dazai's unproductive behavior. However, behind that label lies Dazai's sharp intelligence. He can unravel unexpected situations with ease, so much so that Atsushi once believed he was being hunted by a tiger when in fact he himself was the tiger. Despite his overly dramatic nature, Dazai has a unique perspective. He can carefully plan every step, but often downplays the value of his own actions. He tends to treat even his most elaborate plans as if they were jokes. Dazai is the type who plays around with people and situations and brings humor into almost every moment. One thing is certain, he loves teasing those around him, especially if it gets a laugh. Dazai is a character shrouded in secrecy and haunted by dark shadows. His dedication to the Mafia was unmatched, eventually making him the youngest executive in its history. From a young age, his talent stood out. He was responsible for nearly half of the Port Mafia's profits for years, but these achievements came at a cost. His personal record was marred by countless dark deeds. Even Ichio Higuchi once described his blood as being as dark as the Mafia itself. After joining the armed detective agency as an adult, Dazai retained his cynical and grim outlook. For instance, when Kyoka Izumi expressed guilt over the 35 people she had killed, Dazai responded sarcastically, saying the people he killed were just numbers. But never underestimate Osamu Dazai. In the Mafia world, there's a saying, the greatest misfortune for Dazai's enemies is to become his enemies in the first place. Oda Sakunosuke once said that simply seeing Dazai emerge from the shadows was enough to make his enemies shudder. Dazai was born to live in the Mafia. He has unshakable confidence and a remarkable gift for strategy. Even when facing formidable opponents, he's capable of manipulating their minds and leading them into his traps. While he often acts goofy, Dazai can be harsh and ruthless when it matters most. During his time as a Mafia executive, he racked up an astounding record: 138 counts of conspiracy to murder, 312 counts of extortion, and 625 counts of fraud, among others. After he defected from the Mafia and went into hiding, this criminal record was erased by the 7th Agency under Ango's orders. Dazai is clearly someone willing to take huge risks in life's grand game to stay ahead. One reason for his extreme behavior might be his deeper understanding of what's really at stake, something others might not even grasp. He has access to a wide range of information, which he gathers and analyzes carefully. His brutal experiences in the Mafia have shaped him into someone who sees the world with stark realism. Dazai views life with a seriousness and cynicism that's hard for more idealistic people to comprehend. For instance, Atsushi may be too naive and optimistic, while Kunikida may be too bound to his ideals to accept harsh truths. In many cases, their worldviews are overly idealistic. Anyone trained within the Mafia would have endured extreme violence. Being exposed to that kind of environment, especially from a young age, instills a certain experience, often leading to moral ambiguity. There are moments that show Dazai is someone who can be trusted and relied upon. Take Chuya, for example. He places genuine trust in Dazai, enough to literally put his life in his former partner's hands. Chuya even activates an ability that tears his body apart, something he can only do because Dazai is there to cancel it in time. This goes beyond just trusting Dazai's skills. It reflects an incredibly strong bond. That kind of trust demands deep commitment. Putting your life in someone else's hands in a dangerous situation requires absolute faith. However, Dazai is also deeply mysterious and rarely opens up about himself. Perhaps for this reason, we rarely see anyone who truly understands or cares about him. This raises important questions. Why is Dazai so secretive about his past with the Mafia? Maybe he regrets a lot of the things he's done, but what really happened in his life? Why is he always searching for a way to end it? When we look at Osamu Dazai's character, we may see someone constantly struggling with himself. We don't know much about his past, but there are hints that he carries deep regret. He may be a man full of self-loathing, trying to come to terms with the pain he's caused others. He's lost people who meant a lot to him, like Oda Sakunosuke, and has had to learn how to live without them. Dazai is a complicated person, but that's what makes him so compelling. He's a complex individual, often confusing, sometimes unpredictable, yet we've seen time and time again that Dazai does care about those around him. He knows when to be serious and when to joke. He can offer advice, insight, and words that touch the heart, like when he comforted Atsushi after learning that his adoptive father Asu had died. Asu was someone who raised him with violence, someone Atsushi hated. Yet Dazai's words managed to touch him, freeing him from the emotional burden he carried, because even though crying rarely solves problems, sometimes tears are enough to bring relief, enough to provide a sense of satisfaction, of freedom from the weight pressing down on you. And when Dazai told Kunikida that his idealism would eventually get him killed, he was probably remembering Oda Sakunosuke, who held equally strong ideals and met a tragic end. Simply put, Dazai was afraid that Kunikida might suffer the same fate as his best friend. Behind his calm and playful demeanor, Dazai is always alert, always thinking a step or two ahead of his enemies. Take episode 3 of season 1, for example. He quickly suspected Higuchi of being part of the Port Mafia, so he secretly planted a wiretap on her, despite just meeting her. His intelligence is also shown when he deduces Atsushi's true identity. By connecting pieces of evidence and observing closely, he concludes that Atsushi is the tiger they've been hunting. He even once claimed that he had already figured out half of the deduction in a case Rampo solved, showing just how smart he truly is. A prime example of Dazai's brilliance and strategy appears in episode 9 of season 2. He teams up with Chuya to face a guild member with powers immune to Dazai's own. When Chuya questions the plan, Dazai simply asks, "Have I ever been wrong?" Chuya, usually quick to argue, can't say a word in response. As someone who's fought alongside Dazai for years, he knows better than to doubt him. That moment alone is enough to show just how sharp and effective Dazai is at planning and executing strategies. He nearly predicted, or at least foresaw, most of the major events of Season 2, saving Kyoka Izumi, luring Akutagawa to meet Atsushi, and orchestrating their alliance to defeat the guild's leader and save Yokohama. Even Ozaki Koyo, an executive in the Port Mafia, acknowledges that Dazai is a terrifying person, someone completely unpredictable. No one knew what he used to do before joining the armed detective agency, until he revealed it himself. Dazai was even called one of the 7 mysteries within the organization. Bungou Stray Dogs itself was created from Kafka Asagiri's idea to gather famous writers and poets, portraying them as young people with supernatural powers. That's why so many characters in this series are inspired by real-life literary figures, including Dazai, who takes his name and abilities from the real Osamu Dazai. The real Osamu Dazai was a prominent Japanese writer who lived from 1909 to 1948 and one of the most influential literary voices of the 20th century. His works often dealt with themes of depression, alienation, and the imperfections of human life, with a tone that combined humor, irony, and sorrow. One of his most famous works is Ningen Shikaku, or No Longer Human. The English translation, as discussed by Donald Keene, frames the title as Disqualified from Being Human. This novel is often seen as a semi-autobiographical work. It tells the story of a man named Obayozo and explores his deep sense of despair and alienation. It is considered one of the most influential pieces of Japanese literature. It's clear that both the character Osamu Dazai and his ability, No Longer Human, were inspired by this real-life work and author. His ability nullifies others' supernatural powers no matter how strong they may be. As long as there's physical contact with Dazai, the enemy's ability becomes meaningless. This power was first revealed in episode 1 of season 1 when he returned Atsushi from tiger form back to human. Back when Dazai chose to step into the darkness of the Mafia, he was searching for more than just a place to belong. As he told his friend Oda Sakunosuke, it was part of a deeper search for meaning in his scattered life. Maybe that's why his ability is called Disqualified from Being Human. It reflects how Dazai lacks, or hasn't yet found, a clear purpose in life. That's what makes him disqualified. He lives without direction. He lives in confusion. How can someone be considered fully human if they have no sense of purpose? A meaningful life involves striving, growing, and discovering goals to pursue. So, it's not surprising that without those things, one might be seen as having failed to pass the test of humanity. And maybe when Dazai does good, it isn't out of pure intention, but rather a fulfillment of Oda Sakunosuke's final wish. That Dazai live a life where he saves people. Which raises a question. Did Dazai save Atsushi simply because he was abandoned and orphaned? This question arises especially after Kunikida tells Atsushi that his boat is too small to carry others, that he can only save himself. At this point, Atsushi begins to feel a dilemma, but the answer might be simple. Dazai's boat is bigger, stronger, he has the experience to carry others, to save them. Unlike Atsushi, who's still just starting out. But what if Dazai saved Atsushi simply because he was following Oda's last wish, that he walk the path of saving others instead of destruction? Odasaku once said that no one can fill the emptiness in Dazai's heart, that he will always walk in darkness, and if he chooses neither good nor evil, he'll never find a reason to live. That's why Oda told him, be a good person. Then another question emerges. Is it possible that Dazai only does good as a way to search for meaning in his life, to fill the hole in his heart? As a suicide maniac, he often tries to kill himself in absurd ways, only to give up if the method is too painful. Dazai particularly wants to die in a double suicide with a beautiful woman. He says he likes all types of women, but prefers those who would be willing to die with him if asked. Though this aspect of his personality is usually played for laughs, it actually reflects the real Osamu Dazai's obsession with suicide, which ultimately ended in his death, when he drowned himself in a river with his lover. When we first meet the fictional Dazai, he's floating in a river. This might be a lighter, more comedic echo of that real-life event. Dazai often speaks of wanting to die, like he once did with Odasaku. He's a character full of riddles, with a dark side that runs deep. He's constantly seeking the meaning of life and death. His obsession with suicide, while often shown comedically, reflects real emotional conflict and a deep understanding of human suffering. It reveals a dark void inside him. Even as a teenager, Dazai questioned the value of life. He described death as a way to escape a world slowly oxidizing around him. Yet strangely enough, he couldn't die, no matter how hard he tried. So instead, he tried to fill that void. He sought a reason to live, and chose a life of violence and chaos. But with his dying breath, Odasaku convinced him to choose a different path. He told Dazai that while good and evil may mean nothing to him, choosing the good might make him slightly better. Dazai also believes that death isn't the opposite of life. It's part of it. Without facing death, we can't fully understand the meaning of life. This philosophy sees life and death as two sides of the same coin. Death isn't something outside of life. It's part of the journey. And by confronting it, Dazai believes we can truly understand what it means to live. Death becomes a reminder to appreciate time, pursue purpose, and live consciously. Sadly, Dazai doesn't have that clarity yet. But by recognizing death as part of life's journey, he has become someone unafraid of dying, someone who even chases death. Just look at the most recent season, where he and Fyodor Dostoevsky are forced into a death game orchestrated by Nikolai Gogol. Dazai shows no fear. In fact, he even welcomes it. He willingly takes a shot of poison and appears to enjoy the game, even though it could lead to his death. Maybe it's because he truly doesn't fear death, or maybe it's because he believes he can outsmart it. Each character in Bungo Stray Dogs has a power that reflects the real-life author who inspired them. Dazai's ability, no longer human, grants him a deep understanding of both life and death. This might also explain his obsession with suicide and the darkness that surrounds him. Osamu Dazai is a mystery that life keeps trying to unravel. He's constantly searching for meaning in a world full of contradictions, but there's one thing he's come to accept. Everything he cherishes will eventually be lost. Even the most precious things can disappear in an instant, right when you finally reach them. He says that chasing what's already lost only leads to more suffering. Dazai understands that life is full of impermanence and loss. He knows that everything, including the things we value most, will eventually fade away, that even the things we work so hard to attain are temporary. This view, rooted in impermanence, drives him to keep searching for meaning, for purpose, for something worth holding onto. He's constantly trying to fill that hole within himself to find a reason to live despite his darkness. Behind his complexity, there's one thing worth recognizing. Dazai never truly gives up. He keeps searching, keeps questioning, and keeps moving forward, even if it means walking through the fog of confusion that continues to haunt him.